The Concepcion South mission was split off from a couple of the surrounding missions in 2005, which was really cool because having gotten there in 2010, there weren't a whole lot of like set traditions in the missions yet. So that was really cool. The mission boundaries, while I was there, it's different now because the missions have changed a little bit. While I was there, it was from Concepcion at the north side of it, just going straight across to the border with Argentina, all the way down to the south of the mission, which was Temuco, which is another big city down there. There are a couple smaller cities right below it that were also in the mission. But again, it was just a straight line across the country, was the southern border of the mission. And from top to bottom, it was about an 8-hour bus drive. And while I was there, there was also just one city north of Concepcion called Talcahuano that was part of the mission. There were 12 zones of missionaries. Each zone had between 12 and 30 missionaries or so. There were 200 missionaries total on our mission. It's changed drastically now. I talk with missionaries that are getting back recently, and they're like, "Oh, there's like 60 sisters in the mission," which just blows my mind because there was barely 20 while I was there. They've had to rearrange the mission boundaries a lot. It's an interesting piece of the country. It's right in the center of Chile. Actually, the geographical center of Chile was in one of my areas. There was a nice little plaque that we went and saw on a P-Day once. But since it's on the coast, on the west side, but the mountains are on the east side, there's just like this steady incline going all the way up. And so on the coast, it's really warm during the summer. But during winter, it's just cold rain all the time. Like there were times that it rained for weeks. I remember once that it rained for a week straight. We would go to bed at night and we would hear the rain pattering on our steel garage door. We would wake up to the same noise. And then up in the mountains, we would get snow. So it has a very diverse weather scheme depending on the season and where you are in the mission. Up in the mountains, it's less populated. And actually, that's where you get to see some of the indigenous people. In that area of Chile, they're called the Mapuche, which loosely translated means people of the land. And their language, Mapudungun, was one of the other languages that they speak in Chile. It's not very commonly spoken, but we interacted with enough of the indigenous people that we were able to learn some phrases. We actually taught one family that the mom was Mapuche through and through. Like, she didn't know any Spanish or English. So her kids spoke a little bit of Mapudungun, and we taught her through her kids. And they were excited to have us around. It was great. And then the mom was excited to have us there too, but she just sat in the lessons and she would look at us while we were talking and then suddenly turn to her kids and kind of ask, "So what did they just say?" And the kids would have to explain it to her. In Temuco, one of the bigger cities, they actually have a Mapuche market that all the indigenous people come together. There's just this big building that's a square market, and they sell indigenous like wood carvings, satchels, like horns from rams and goats and whatnot. And it's just really cool to see what kinds of things they can make from natural materials, just from animal skins and from the other parts of, like the horns and the hooves of the animals. And it was really cool to see all of that. the church culture in Chile. The first missionaries in Chile were Parley P. Pratt and his companions that came in 1851. But then they failed miserably because they just couldn't learn the language. So they left. And then the next missionaries after them didn't come back until 1960. Yeah, 1960. And so when that happened, they came and they had lots of success. There are lots of people who came and they got baptized. But then for some reason, a lot of members just stopped coming to church. Like, they would have baptisms, they would have up to like 70 baptisms a week in one ward. And there would just be hundreds of people that could come to church. And then they just stopped coming. So a really common thing in Chile is just inactivity. While I was there, we actually had a program called Permanecer, which is to stay or to persevere. And part of that program was visiting at least 10 inactive families each week and visiting with them, teaching them, and inviting them to come back to church. Because the inactivity rates are so high in Chile. It's between 70 and 90% in some places. In most places, actually. Every area I was in, we never had an activity rate that was higher than 20%. So in other words, we would have a ward of 80, 85 people, 90 maybe. But then there would be another 900 people that weren't coming to church, but were on the church records. So needless to say, we didn't have trouble finding people to visit for this Permanecer program. So that was part of the church culture in Chile, is that a lot of people are inactive just because when missionaries came at first, everybody flocked to join the Mormons. And then for this reason or that reason, they just all stopped coming. And so they would come back to have their children baptized, but then go inactive again. And so one thing that they really focus on is bringing people back to activity. I don't know if this statistic is true, but someone once told me that like 1 out of every 25 Chileans is Mormon. I don't know how true that is, but just another little tidbit about the weather. You'll definitely want lots of waterproof things. Because like I said, it rains all the time. A couple of tricks that my companions and I learned. We bought Tupperware that was a perfect size for our scriptures. So we just stick our scriptures inside the Tupperware and seal it off. Or we use plastic bags to like throw all of our stuff in, tie the plastic bag shut, and then put it in our backpack. And that way, the rain, like, you're going to get soaked. No matter what you're wearing or what you have. If you have an umbrella, you're still going to get soaked. So it was more just protecting the materials we had, our scriptures, pamphlets, pass-along cards. It was just protecting that stuff in the backpack that we were most worried about, because we knew we were going to get soaked either way. But in the summer, it gets really hot. I don't know how to prepare for that. Just be mentally prepared for that. That's all I can say.